goodness, 2025, and we are bringing you a fantastic guest. Colin Anson is joining us from Pixevety. You guys, your mind is probably going to be blown today, and I just want to tell you, I get into pricing for this service, and it is not as expensive as you might think. So I just really want you to listen to this. Maybe it's something that you talk with your school district or your school about, because we're talking all about safety and security of media, of pictures and videos. And you can certainly use this product to ensure that you're not posting pictures of kids that should not be published on social media. But it's a storage solution. It is so much more. So Colin founded Pixevety about 10 years ago. He's going to share his story and how it all works. Very focused on legislation. They actually work with schools all over the world. Just really excited for you to learn more about this tool. And again, very interesting things to think about when it comes to sharing things out on social media and then just dealing with all of the images, all of the videos that you have and security and safety. I think with AI and how that's evolving so quickly, we're all a little bit nervous. Well, Colin's kind of on the front end of some of that. So I can't wait to get into this week's interview. But before that, we always start with the K-12 PR tip, and that's coming up next. All right, today's K-12 PR tip is a simple one. Your social media profiles, some of them, like Facebook and like Twitter or X or LinkedIn, have a cover image on there. Is it time to update? We at Social School for EDU, we update our cover images every quarter. So cute. I just updated mine for New Auburn, and a mom was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a picture of my little boy in a fireman's jacket." And that was really exciting for her to see. So showcasing different students, different activities, and of course, different times of year. If you've still got a picture from 2022, or maybe from your graduates from last year, and now it's almost time for getting near towards graduation for 2025, it might be time to update that cover image. So just take this tip as take a look at it, see if you need to update it. If you want some divine inspiration, we've got a whole bunch of templates for cover images in our membership group. And so if you're not part of that, you can certainly check it out over at socialschoolforedu.com. Okay. We like to make social media a little bit easier. But now let's get into this week's interview with Colin Anson. I am so excited to welcome my very first guest from Australia, Mr. Colin Anson. Hi, Colin.
Hey, Andrea, how are you?
I'm really good. I am so excited to invite you to the podcast and host you here. I met one of your employees last summer at
Mhm.
the National School Public Relations Association meeting. We
That's
were
right.
hanging out. He even made a bracelet. We were making some Taylor Swift bracelets. He made one for his daughter. And I learned a little bit about your company. So, why don't you share your background and your role as CEO and co-founder of Pixevety?
Sure, I'd love to. And Anthony spoke nothing but wonderful. He was so proud and so happy to meet you. And making bracelets is something that he is probably doing a little bit too much of. And if you ever meet Anthony, he's not the type of guy you'd expect to be making bracelets for his daughter, but he's a lovely chap.
Yes.
Anyway, so my background, we've been doing Pixevity now for over a decade. My background before that was in media. It was for News Corp. And interesting time. It was when everything was converting from offline to online. So it was an amazing period. And how this concept started was just like most things, I guess, when you become a parent yourself and you go through the whole process that your parents went through, and you start to see, I guess, through the lens of your experience or what you do, you start to see, I could do this a little bit better. So the original concept really came out from, I guess, filling out a school photography form. It was the same form that my parents did. And I just couldn't believe it. We've gone all this way and we're still putting in, we call it jingle mail, where you put your money in an envelope and you send it into the schools for the schools to deal with. We were giving amazing amount of data to somebody we didn't know, and off it went. So that was the original seed. After that, personal experience really kicked in again. Uh, I guess being in media, I wasn't a big fan of social media at that stage. I'm still not a great fan. It has its place, don't get me wrong. And I think a lot of things have come out now where we've all started to realize it's not the form, the warm, fuzzy friend that we always thought. But it definitely has its place, and it's definitely a powerful tool if used correctly. So I guess one of the things that really upset me initially was that when we opted out as parents to say, no, I didn't want my daughter's photo on social media, and I was actually interested to learn that a lot of people didn't want that to happen, not because of, oh, we're trying to protect our privacy as much. It was more along the lines of, I'm the local bank manager, I'm the local policeman, I'm the just other reasons that people didn't want to know who their children were, let alone where they went to school. So that was one of the issues. So when I said no to that, and there wasn't any real provision for a school to be able to do that at this stage, privacy law wasn't really thought of. There was no ability for schools to deal with it. But I was told that she couldn't participate in inter-school sport. She couldn't be in the school play. And it was basically 30% of her school life she couldn't participate in because I said no to social media. And that was the school's entire concept, was we just got to push out, we've got to promote ourselves on social media. It wasn't about the families, it was about promoting the school. So that bugged me a little bit. It was irksome. And then there was the other time when I was driving along, same school, I see my daughter's photograph on the side of a bus promoting the school. Do you know, it would have been nice to have been asked, I guess. That was another issue. When I confronted them, they said, well, it wasn't really so it's not social media. Well, it's probably worse. You've got the logo of the school, where the child goes to school, and we're just a little bit more private than that. So really, technology's created this problem that we kind of thought that technology had to fix. So the background of the company was it was about delivering choice. And then, of course, along 2017 comes and privacy law really started to kick in and the idea of consent. And then from where we started, it was all about protecting kids online. And then we realized schools didn't have the ability to be able to deal with it. There is an expectation that schools are promoting on social media. There is an expectation that they communicate that way at that time, but they have no way of dealing with the primary asset or content going on, which are photographs. So I started to change my opinion a bit and say, if I can help the schools, if I can put privacy compliance or safeguarding or security compliance in the hands of a teacher and they don't have to think about it, that's where we really kicked off from.
Okay. So how does your product work then? What does a school, how do they use it?
Yeah. So schools use it as the catch-all. We have this thing, collect, organize, protect, and share, which just oddly enough adds up to COPS. But it's really around centralization of content. At the moment, there are a lot of photographs which, irrespective of the law, there are a lot of photographs of children on personal devices, whether they're phones, iPads, laptops, etc. That's an issue. So the first thing you want to be able to do is centralize it, get all the content in one safe local storage. And it's all cloud-based. It's cloud-based for a reason. The amount of horsepower we need to be able to deal with all the different file types. It's not just JPEGs and basic file types. You have to deal with all of them. And it goes in and we connect into the school's information systems. We've just achieved ISO certification, so we're very, very proud of that. We're all around protecting data. And what it does is we are a contracted services provider of the school. I always have trouble with that. And what that means is that we're an extension of the school. So absolutely no data comes in that's not necessary. It links in with the school's information system. And then anything going into, so that will provide who the child is. It's all encrypted, and there's a whole lot of security around that. It will then tell us what the parental consent settings or what the school settings are, and they'll combine the two. So as a photograph comes in, it does a lot of work. It actually gets the original file, puts it in a vault and protects it for a whole lot of reasons. The second thing it does is it makes multiple versions, which are locked down for uses for different purposes. Then it'll tell me what's in the photograph. So it'll make sure that there's nothing untoward in the photograph. You'd be surprised how many photographs, pick a swim meet, for example. The hero person in the front, they're taking the photograph, great photo. Someone in the background could be just bending over the wrong way, or just it'll block that photograph. It'll let them know. So it uses a lot of those sort of technologies. It'll describe the photograph, all so it's easy to find. It'll then say, is there somebody in it? Who is that person? What are the parental consent settings on that photograph? So if you've got a photograph with 10 children in it, it'll always pick the strictest settings to make sure that you're protecting the child in the image, but more importantly, the school and the staff at all
Okay.
times.
And where are you located? I mean, are you serving only schools in Australia? Are you serving schools all around
Global.
the world?
Yeah, we're global. The all US schools are served out of the US. Nothing leaves the US. Same with Canada, stays in Canada, doesn't leave Canada. Same with Australia and UK.
Okay. So,
Um,
you can use this product to help identify not only students, but teachers as well that don't want to be photographed. Is that right?
right, that's right. And the other concept around that is not that they don't want to be photographed. They don't want to have their images used externally. They don't want to have that image go out for many, many reasons. And really, a lot of this is about choice, and I guess protecting and in encouraging. So in my daughter's case, she wasn't able to be in certain photographs because I said no to social media. But so she missed out on some of her school life because I said no to social media. What about the children that actually have no choice, whether they're foster children or for some legal reason they can't be identified in photographs or can't be used or can't be in a photograph? They still deserve to have their school life recorded for their own benefit. This is a system which enables that and encourages that inclusion because it won't let anything happen to those images, but they themselves in time can have access to them if they want to.
Okay. So if I were going to post I wanted to share an image of, let's say, a field trip. And I took some pictures on a field trip, and there was a few grades. And then I wanted, normally I would have those on my phone or, have those sent to me from someone, and I would just post them onto, let's say, Facebook and Instagram. If I
Yep.
were using Pixevety, what does that process look like?
Okay. So we deliberately don't link directly to social media. There is
Yep.
a way that you can get the content, you can filter the content and get it out. Don't get me wrong. It's just that from a protection standpoint, we don't. But what you have is if you're using our cell phone app, or mobile app, or whichever the lingo is, you take the photographs within the app and it will not stay on your phone. So it protects you and your phone because it stays in encrypted cache and it gets uploaded into the system. Then it goes through the whole process of who's in the photograph, what can I do with the photograph. So in that particular case, you've done that filtering. If you're using the desktop app and you want to be able to find assets that you can use or photos that you can use for social media, you literally have a very simple button saying, show me the photos I can use for social media, and all of them will come up. You then create a collection and then post the link.
Okay. And if you were looking for, I mean, certain ones that you just took and uploaded, you'd still be able to find those, I'm assuming, based
Absolutely.
on date and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah,
that.
one of the biggest things in a system like ours, and we have some schools with well over 1 million photographs, videos, audio files, whatever, in there, is to be able to find it. That is probably one of the biggest challenges. People have this concept that the minute I put it up, it's got to be searchable. So we have to deliver that in real time. So, for example, someone takes photographs of a track meet, they'll then upload it into the system. They'll then tell you, hey, these photos are in there. Well, it's very easy for the person at the other end to be able to find them because you can do it by date, you can do it by event, or you can simply search by latest photographs uploaded. The search power is probably the key. We've always had this theory that it's one thing to have millions of assets, but really what you want to find is that one or two or 10 that you really need to use there and then. That time-saving aspect is, I guess, is a key component of what we do. And that's one of the things that we had in the early stages because staff were telling us our biggest issue is it takes us nearly 2 hours or an hour to find the photograph we're actually looking for. This will serve it to you on a plate.
Well, this is amazing. I'm learning a ton. I know that, keeping track of photos and videos and things like that is a constant struggle for people that are focused on, school marketing or school PR, the work that we do. And so what you're saying is you're not even taking a picture with really your phone, you're taking a picture through the app. So nothing's really ever on your phone. It goes right to the cloud. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
It goes into so each school or each, we've got camps using it as well in the US. So each one of them has its own separate um, area. There is nothing that's shared, which means that no data gets leaked and shared and trained anywhere else. It's completely locked down. So anything that you're taking on your cell phone doesn't even touch your memory, doesn't get mixed in with your personal photographs. That was one of the big things that we heard as well initially, was that staff were saying, or teachers especially were saying, I don't want school life mixed in with, I don't want to have to organize those as well as organize it somewhere else. So that's, yeah, it bypasses local storage, goes into the system, goes through the processing, which will then say what you can and can't do. If there's a special needs child or there's someone that just can't be photographed for whatever reason, it will move that to an area, which means that even if you're a teacher, you've taken that photograph and there's someone in the photograph that shouldn't be seen, they won't even see the photograph. They'll know that it's been uploaded, but they won't be able to see the asset. Again, it's all around that safeguarding and protection and security. That's not something that it's an easy thing to do, especially if you consider schools are sending up thousands of images every week, and that's something we're proud of. That's why we need, I guess, the system sitting where it is to have that extra horsepower to be able to deal with that much content. You can also take video on your cell phone as well, and that will get uploaded. That's a unique challenge in itself. We've done all sorts of studies on videos and how long people watch the video for, and you'd be surprised. A 4-minute video, people just really want to know where their child is. Is their child in that video? And that's what we deliver.
Wow. So are some of your clients, I mean, I know that I think, from hearing your founder story, it was really based on that safety and security and, protection of students or staff members that don't want to be on social media. But are some schools just using this more for that organization piece and being able to easily have that filed? I could imagine,
Yep.
but
That's kind of where it starts. It's initially schools understand that they've got to get control of it, especially as I guess the law catches up. But more importantly, they want to do the right thing. I don't think I've ever met a school that wants to do the wrong thing. We've met a few that probably want the easiest path, but and we've tried to make that as easy as possible within the confines of legislation. And that's where it starts. So initially, it's about how do I get it all in one place? How do I collect and organize it and protect it? And that's where that COP thing comes in. Well, this is how you do it. The sharing component comes last. There are multiple ways to get people into the gallery. In the US, it's different to the rest of the world. They actually want parents connected to the primary gallery. Once they work out how it all works, then they get trust into the system, and then they want to plug parents straight in because they're the ones, I guess, that get the phone call saying, "Oh, my daughter or my son's in a particular play. May I have the photos, please?" And they're generally kind enough to say, "Well, yeah." They spend the time and do it. There's the other side of it too, where they'll distribute photographs on a flash drive. At the end of the year, they go and get all the photographs of year 6, for example, and they put it on a flash drive. There is no way to check whether you should be sharing that data. They're just doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. So we protect in that space for the staff member as well. So yeah, firstly, you organize, collect, organize, and protect. The sharing component can be done later, and that's generally what happens. You either have what we have a plugin which goes into a parent portal. Someone as parent logs in, for example, they can only see photographs of their child just automatically in order, and they can swap order and change what it looks like, etc. Or they get connected straight into the gallery, which seems to be a big thing in the US. And the reason why that works is because the system knows who the child is and who the parents are. So even if we're both parents of a child going to the same children, not of a child, two separate families logging in, we might see very different things based on consent. So just what your role is where it starts. It goes all the way down to individual consent within a photograph, whether you can see it or not. And so it does that automatically. So what if I'm using it from a school's perspective, as an administrator, as a manager, I'm going to see a very, very different story than I would as a parent. A parent may only be able to see that class that year, or general photographs. So it's quite a intricate system, which is served up very, very easily. And that integration piece that we have, that initial setup, is incredibly important. You were talking about Anthony before. He rides shotgun on every single, he's got a team, of course, and we've got a whole lot of them that are just sitting over the other side. We also have live chat, which is, they're not bots, they're real people. And they walk schools through not only the initial setup, but permanently all the way through. In fact, the biggest thing we've had live chat in the last week is Merry Christmas, which is nice because they actually know that they're people and they're communicating as people, not bots.
Yeah. So about how many schools do you work with worldwide? Can you share that?
Yeah, well over 300,
Okay.
sort of mid 300s. And I would tell you the exact number. I'm just not overly sure. We have groups, and we also have a district that's starting a trial. And so that will increase it as well. And really, it's been built at an enterprise level, so it'll work for a school as well as it will work for a group of hundreds of schools. I guess the concept at a district level is more along the lines of the district set the standards. They would set, these are our rules. This is our rules of engagement, for lack of a better term, on what we do with media. Yes, they can be tweaked at a local level, but what it's really doing, it's protecting that diocese or district by saying, well, these are our standards. And what it does for the school is they don't have to think about that. They just use it. Photos go in and photos go out based on consent.
So you work with you mentioned camps. So you're in more than just schools. What are there some other types of
Yeah.
businesses or organizations you work with?
Yeah, we are very, very much focused on schools. So our
Okay.
entire system hasn't just been sort of manipulated for schools. It was built around and for schools from the outset. The
Okay.
integration is with schools. We do work with camps, but those camps are school-based camps.
Okay.
And we have developed different bits of technology which enable the camp to do what it needs to do. So, and that's fine. But our focus is really schools. We have had some interest in the education sector outside of a school, tertiary education, universities, etc. We have also started to work with, I guess, special needs schools, especially in the UK. But again, very education centric. We've started to work with sheltered workshops, but again, it's in that similar organised, I guess, service. But schools are that's our focus, without a doubt.
Okay.
You know, the idea of protecting children, that's now evolved. If I can protect the staff, I can protect the school, and that will protect the kids. So
Right.
that's what we do.
Do you have, are there other companies out there doing something similar to what you have or not exactly?
Yeah. That no, nothing is even close in terms of what we do. There are other systems out there which will do partially what we do. There are four key components of any school, whether from management to IT departments to marketing to I guess parents and that parent community. Some of them only focus on one, not all four. The compliance piece is something that we've been focused on forever. So the system, depending on what state you're in, that's one thing about the US. There are 50 individual states and they have their own rules. And yes, there's FERPA and there are national laws. But each one of the states has a different mix of laws. Pixevety is able to match that. And it's able to go well beyond that when you need to go to GDPR. So there are some states which are getting towards that. The system has it built in. We're the only system that's ISO certified. That ISO 27001 is a big project. It's not just about SOC 2 or the actual compliance of the servers and where the data is kept. It means our data handling all the way through every single staff member. They're all trained, we're all understood, we have processes and policies in place. So nothing even comes close on that stage. The other platforms, I guess, are more around, I guess, internal Facebooks, for lack of a better term, and that's kind of it. And what we're seeing is our biggest uptake at this stage is churn from those other platforms where schools have realized that they need a system, and sort of scratching it. They are considerably cheaper as well. But there's a reason for it. There's a lot of processing in place and protection. So our system as well just doesn't have, it's not just a simple backup. There are three concurrent systems running at the same time. So everything's happening in triplicate. It just goes on and on. So nothing does it even close in that space, but we did go heavily down the compliance and security and safeguarding uh, I guess, road early when I was told quite simply that no one cares about that. Well, I cared about that. That's why we started it in the first place. And that's where we came at it from. What would a parent want? Do I want my child's photograph searchable? No, I don't. Okay, well, there's a setting in there. Do I want anyone to be able to access my child's photo? No, I don't. Or maybe, yes, I do. It's all around enabling choice. And that's what the system does automatically.
So, when a school or school district decides to partner with you, how long does it take to implement the system with staff members and everything? Because I'm assuming there's some training that's in like, hey, you can't take pictures just with your camera app on your phone anymore.
Yeah. So there's the training side of how to use the system is 3 hours. And we
Okay.
usually break it up into three 1 hour sessions because people's minds go after, mine go after 15 minutes, but other people have a lot longer than I. So that's how to use the system. The integration part into the student information systems, that's an IT manager, and it probably takes no more than 20 minutes. The single sign-on, all of that happens at that point. The setting up of the gallery takes no more than an hour. The training takes no more than 2 or 3 hours after that. So it's not a large process.
Okay.
Most of the time comes with us talking to the management team or whoever's in charge of the school's end. What are your key settings that you want? What are you trying to achieve? We set it up, off it goes. Then it's all about getting content in. The biggest thing is getting content in, which is a click and drag. It's not a complex thing. Once that's in, we like to make sure that all the student information's in. Obviously, it's locked down, but all the student information's in. The initial, I guess, settings of the system are in place. That doesn't take long. The What we have found with districts, for example, is we do like a personal touch. We do, like I was in the States. I'm in the States every few months, and I'm actually planning to move there for a fair bit of time next year. Not only do we like to get to know each other, this is a great way, but I also like to visit. So in the last trip, I went to quite a few of the new schools that are on board with us, and I went and visited districts and dioceses that were about to come on board with us. And I like them to have my personal cell number. I like them to be able to call me. Now, it does get a little bit out of control early on. Everyone's excited, and then they kind of forget about me unless they've got a problem. But that training component, so for example, Anthony and his team, I send Anthony's team. They get to know people. We like to do them in groups. And the reason why you do training in groups is because people feed off each other. We also learn what workflows schools have. Schools are really similar across the world, what their needs are, but the way they achieve different things can be very different. And just like anything, if a system does 80% straight out of the box, perfect. It's that 20% that I'm interested in. That's what the staff go and get to know you. So look, it's a very simple system to get in. It's a very simple system to train on. It's just us wanting to get to know the schools more, I guess, to understand what that little 20% could be.
Yeah. So, if listeners are considering bringing on, your company,
Mhm.
what are the next steps? Do they reach out to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a big social media fan, but I'm definitely on LinkedIn. But we have our company website, pixevety.com. They can always click on there, click on
Okay.
info. If they write to me, I will respond to them. And I like to do that. I like to have initial phone calls or initial meetings like this to understand what their needs are. In some cases, the other, I guess, major component of what we do is we like to look at all the policies a school has. It's not just about selling a bit of, SaaS software. That just doesn't work because our system, being a compliance tool more than anything else, has to integrate with all of I guess, the processes and policies of a school. Even though the law is quite murky in some cases, I'm actually surprised at how well schools do in privacy policies, collection statements, etc. There's quite a few of them. We need to make sure that we're in those statements to make sure we protect the school, but also we provide disclosure. So it's not just buying a bit of software. Part of our process is we have a different team that focuses on that privacy and safeguarding and security element. And we do that assessment initially as well, because there might be a few things that they need to do just to protect themselves, has nothing to do with us. But we've kind of really gone down this path, especially when you're talking about special category data or anything to do with children. It's not something you can play with. You have to make sure that you're doing it correctly. And that's not a simple process, but we've made it simple by providing this tool. Yeah, it's one of the major components that I don't really talk about. I mean, obviously the product stands alone. That's 30% of what we do. I'd say 40% of what we do is then the service, because you don't want to just buy something you never hear from somebody again. You need to know who's helping you, and they need to be available. And the other 30% is all around compliance. Obviously, schools have their own legal counsels, and we have a look at it and we say, well, take this to your lawyer. But a lot's changing. So our job is to make sure that we're ahead of what's happening. So I never thought my life would be back into law and we've got people in the business that have worked in some very serious management consultancy firms for years. And their heads are buried permanently in what could be like market sentiment. They're in actual physical law, what's being proposed, and we have to have that built into the system. So when a system is, you were saying, where's your system deployed? The US has a different set of systems and I guess things turned on or off based on the region, just like the UK. The UK or Australia, very, very different. So the instances are different. I couldn't have just one system across the world because of the legal situation. So that extra 30% is something that we get in early, and it's all around us protecting the school.
Right.
It's not something we charge for. It's just a part of who we are.
Okay. And my audience would just be mad at me, Colin, if I don't try to ask something about pricing. I'm assuming it's based on, level of media that you're putting in, or level of number of
And that's
students, or
it.
how does
Yeah,
pricing work?
and that's it. And the interesting thing with pricing is we've got two models. Actually, we've got three. One is a straight, you just buy a gallery and it comes with X amount of storage. And the actual storage is the cheap part. And that anywhere from $3,900 to 7,000,
Okay.
depending on scale. So the more content that goes in, the actual storage is nothing. It's the other components that add up, whether it's the search. I mean, indexing all the time. So when somebody says, hey, I've just put this in, search this, you have to do it in real time. Consent has to be done in real time. There are certain things that have to be done immediately. When you're talking about systemics, though, or when you're talking about smaller schools, generally schools with 500 plus, it's a pretty set standard fee, usually around that 5,000 a year. We have a hybrid model, which is a set price for the gallery, then it's a price per student. And that kind of gets your price down, but it also enables you to have a certain amount of, I guess, capacity per student. On average, most schools put in 250 megabytes of a particular student. It's just how the numbers work. So that's how we assess it. So that's how we get a price per student. So it can be anywhere at a smaller school from 2,500 at a really small school all the way up to 8,000 for a very, very large school. But we tend to do that sort of hybrid model. Well, there's the price for the gallery, which is around $2,000, and then you do a price per student. And that even a large school might say, well, we don't have that many photographs. So it's not a simple there's the price, because we want to make sure we've always built the system in a way that enables the smaller school to be able to afford it.
Right.
And when you're doing a district or I guess a diocese, it's not really about the number of galleries. We do have a price per student rate in there, and it's just under $10 a student per year. But you get a lot
Okay.
for that. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question, Colin, because I thought it was going to be way more than that. So, that's great. I'm going to make sure to tease that when I do the introduction so people know. Very interesting. I'm very intrigued by this system because I know that this is something that schools struggle with. And this seems to be a really complete solution. So I know you don't love social media, but I always like to ask people what their best social media tip is. So what would you say is your best social media tip?
Okay, if I had to, I think making sure that the content you're writing is relevant for that market. So, for example, my LinkedIn articles, and I do write a lot of articles sometimes, and most of the time I'm about to release another one. It's really venting in some cases.
Hmm.
The next one is around. Okay, if I go to a school and I think about this simple social media tip for schools, if it's such a vital tool, which I still I'm on the fence with, because there are alternatives. But I do understand it has its place. Take a photograph from behind. So if there's a track meet or it's in a classroom or whatever it is, if you take a photograph from behind, none of the students are identifiable. Use the photograph. That's so. I guess I have two. First one is take the photo. First one is sorry is make sure the content's relevant for the where you're posting it. And the second one is take photographs that don't have identifiable information. In the US, it's different too. In Australia, or I guess all over the world, we have school uniforms. So not only are you taking a photograph of a child, but you're also telling just by the photograph, you're telling I guess the world where that child goes to school. What's the risk of that? Well, worst case scenario, death. Best case scenario, someone's going to know where they go to school. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. There's a grey area in the middle. So without school uniforms, we do find a lot of schools take photographs in front of the school sign, which is just as bad. Just try and remove as much identifiable information as possible before, I guess, posting.
Okay. Interesting. We could talk for a long, long time because obviously I am making I've had a decade of using social media to celebrate all the great things happening. But I definitely am glad that we got to connect. And, this is a viable thing for people that not only want to keep the kids safe, but then also use social media afterwards. So,
Yeah.
Colin, if anybody wanted to reach out, what would be the best way to stay connected to you? I mean, they can visit your website, right?
Probably directly via LinkedIn,
Okay.
which is just Colin Anson. You'll find me. There's very simply, or type Pixevety and you'll find me as well. And in that particular case, you'll get the articles that we write. We constantly are writing articles around what we've learnt all over the world, what we see as coming to different regions, and I guess the biggest thing facing schools at this particular point. And it's not so much coming from just a marketer's point of view. It'll be a marketer's point of view. It'll be a PR. It will all be all the way up to business managers and bursars and I guess compliance and legal. I guess the other major part is I think people are starting to become more aware of cybersecurity and cyber protection. These sort of words are now on everybody's lips in I guess the leadership teams in schools. Schools are actually being attacked more than most other categories when it comes to cybercrime or phishing or people just trying to do nasty things with that sort of data. The school has a lot of data which needs to be protected, and I think one of the things when we started this, I was frustrated that schools weren't seeing it, but why would they see it? That's not what they do. And education technology has a great responsibility, far greater than just providing a product and putting it in. Not only do we all have to play with each other and make sure that the different systems talk to each other, but we have to hold each other into account when it comes to the level of protection we provide. So even the systems that we plug into, we do enormous due diligence on what their technology is like, as we would expect them to do on ours. Very long-winded way of saying that you've got to be very, very careful on how you connect, what you connect, and make sure schools are aware of what's in front of them. And quite often they don't. Most of that, 30% of what we do is really in the education space for schools. We actually now have talks. We organise webinars to talk specifically about different bits of legislation. That's not what we got into the business for, but we had to understand what was coming. And then we realized that that's what schools needed more than anything else. As I said before, no school or no teacher does deliberately something the wrong. 99.99% of the time, they all want to do the right thing.
Right.
Expedience sometimes causes the issue.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I use this at home and I'm going to use it in the classroom. Well, they're not actually built for that purpose. And if you think about social media as a whole, it wasn't actually built for what it's become. So, and anyway, I still believe there are alternatives, but I still think social media is the number one tool to bring people in. Just my old-fashioned, I guess, background is that with marketing, you want to bring people to you,
Mhm.
right? So use social media to bring them to you and then give them the gambit of everything you want at that particular point. Um, but I'll get off
Yeah.
that soapbox. It's only me, and
Ah,
but
very
I'm
interesting. No, I think it's great things for my audience and for me to continue to think about, and it is hard to keep up. There's a lot of moving parts, especially here in the U.S. With the education system, and this is an option. So I really hope that everybody listening will check it out. Pixevety is Pixevety. We'll have the link to the website, to Colin's LinkedIn profile and his email in the show notes. So you can definitely learn more. And definitely, if you are listening and you're a user of this, let me know. It's good to be able to share, schools that are happy and using this and some of the things that it solved. But great founder story. As a fellow entrepreneur, I love to hear that, and I'm really glad that you have solved a problem for schools. So thanks for joining me today, Colin.
Thank you. An absolute pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for listening. We will be back with another great episode, another great guest next week. And until then, keep telling those stories.